Folks, thanks for turning up. Great to be seen. I wish I could see you. I'll wave to you all. Hi. Now, I've got a poem. It's probably not so well known. It's called The Dormouse and the Doctor. It's a delightful poem they're all delightful. This is delightful with a capital D. D for delightful. And it's all about a dormouse who loves sleeping amongst geraniums red and delphiniums blue. And then a doctor comes along and thinks he's ill because he's in bed all the time or asleep. And so the doctor says, right, the problem is what you need are chrysanthemums instead of delphiniums and geraniums. They're flowers, by the way. Well, I'll just say that, you know. They are flowers. I probably wouldn't have known that when I was small. Big words, geranium and delphinium. And so the doctor goes away and he gets some chrysanthemums. They're also flowers. Let's just get that right. You've got geraniums, it's a flower. Delphiniums is a flower, and chrysanthemums is a flower. Are flowers. Why do they have such big names, awkward names? Not like Daisy or something like that. But anyway, they are flowers. Latin names, I'm afraid. So the doctor gets some chrysanthemums, and the dormouse is not a happy dormouse, and I'll show you the pictures. There is. I get it right. There we go. There's the dormouse, and just about making out that where my finger is, there, and all those round about are flowers. Geraniums red and delphiniums blue. Here comes the doctor. Dun, 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 dun. And then the doctor looks at the poor old dormouse, or the happy dormouse, and says, "You need chrysanthemums." It's a flower, of course. And the doctor goes away and gets some cuttings. There he goes, chrysanthemums. And then the dormouse is still not very happy, so the doctor says, right, you need tonic and rest and all sorts. And there's a nurse looking after the dormouse, that picture there. Ooh, get it right. And it also says you need to have a ride in a car. So there he is, the dormouse in the car, chauffeur-driven car. It'll all come clear in the poem. And then the doctor eventually comes back with his chrysanthemums, and he digs up the geraniums, the delphiniums, the other flowers, and he puts in these flowers, and he thinks, right, everything's fine now. But in fact, what the dormouse has done is he just closes his eyes and pretends that they are the sort of flowers that he likes, which are, I'm going to test you, geraniums and delphiniums. Had to look that up myself. So let's crack on with the poem. The Dormouse and the Doctor by A. Milne. If anybody knows this, you can have a gold star. Please order your gold star online. Via Flamingo Punk. Those gold stars. Okay, Dormouse and the Doctor. There once was a dormouse who lived in a bed of delphiniums blue and geraniums red. And all the day long he had a wonderful view of geraniums red and delphiniums blue. A doctor came hurrying round, and he said, "Tut tut, I am sorry to find you in bed. Just say 99 while I look at your chest. Don't you find that chrysanthemums answer the best?" The dormouse looked round at the view and replied, when he said 99, that he tried and he tried, and much the most answering thing that he knew were geraniums red and delphiniums blue. The doctor stood frowning and shaking his head, and he took up his shiny silk hat as he said, "What the patient requires is a change." And he went to see some chrysanthemum people in Kent. The dormouse lay there, and he gazed at the view of geraniums red and delphiniums blue, and he knew there was nothing he wanted instead of delphiniums blue and geraniums red. The doctor came back, and to show what he meant, he had brought some chrysanthemum cuttings from Kent. "Now these," he remarked, "give a much better view than geraniums red and delphiniums blue." They took out their spades and they dug up the bed of delphiniums blue and geraniums red, and they planted chrysanthemums, yellow and white. And now, said the doctor, we'll soon have you right. The Dormouse looked out and he said with a sigh, I suppose all these people know better than I. It was silly perhaps, but I did like the view of geraniums red and delphiniums blue. The doctor came round and examined his chest and ordered him nourishment, tonics and rest. How very effective, he said, as he shook the thermometer, all these chrysanthemums look. The Dormouse turned over to shut out the sight of the endless chrysanthemums, yellow and white. How lovely, he thought, to be back in a bed of delphiniums blue and geraniums red. The doctor said, Tut, it's another attack, and orders him milk and massage of the back, and freedom from worry and drives in a car, and murmured, How sweet your chrysanthemums are. The Dormouse lay there with his paws into his eyes, and imagined himself such a pleasant surprise. I'll pretend the chrysanthemums turned to a bed of delphiniums blue and geraniums red. The doctor next morning was rubbing his hands and saying, There's nobody quite understands these cases as I do. The cure has begun. How fresh the chrysanthemums look in the sun. The Dormouse lay happy, his eyes were so tight, he could see no chrysanthemums, yellow or white, and all that he felt at the back of his head were delphiniums blue and geraniums red. And that is the reason, Aunt Emily said, if a Dormouse gets in a chrysanthemum bed, you will find, so Aunt Emily says, that he lies fast asleep on his front, with his paws to his eyes. So I remember reading this poem once, and it was actually in the paper. Whenever it was, there was a picture of someone had found a couple of dormice, and they were fast asleep in his hand, two of them in his hand, so teeny weeny, and massive, huge tails, long tails. I mean, dormice. And in that respect, bearing in mind the long tail bit, I'm going to read you one follow-up poem. It's one of the mouse poems. I actually just read it just recently, but I'm going to read it again because it goes so well with the poem I've just read. It's called The Christening. It goes like this. Remember, mice have long tails. The Christening by A. Milne. What shall I call my dear little Dormouse? His eyes are small, but his tail is a Dormouse. I sometimes call him Terrible John, because his tail goes on and on and on. And I sometimes call him Terrible Jack, because his tail goes on to the end of his back. And I sometimes call him Terrible James, because he says he likes me calling him names. But I think I shall call him Jim, because I am fond of him. Isn't that lovely? And there's a picture. I'm afraid it's scribbled. I have ordered another book, a scribble-free book, but there's a picture of Chris Robin looking at his Dormouse. There's the Dormouse with a very, very long tail. So those are the two Dormouses poems in the Chris Robin book. I hope you've enjoyed those. I think they're both delightful poems. And we'll see you next time. Over now.